Welcome to the Lockbox! Lockbox!
Welcome to the Lockbox! Hello again, guys, and welcome back to the Lockbox, episode 8, I believe. And today I'm joined by Anher.
Hello.
And Tesseract.
Yo.
Today we'll bring you some news about the game update 30, which is on the test server currently, and also some stuff from the forums that we've been looking at. Also, we'll bring you some genre news, and also our interview today is with Kristyana from USPC. So let's start off with the forums, guys. What's been going on?
There's been a lot of discussion over the game update 30 stuff, obviously.
Yeah, it contains a lot of what I like to call quality of life alterations. It's nothing substantial. Won't bore you with going through everything. We'll put the link in the description below to the direct link to the direct post. But just to run you through it, it's PvP KO credit change. So the player who does the most damage will get the award for killing a player. In progress instance options. You'll have an option to choose to join instances that are already in progress or join a new instance. Combat state options. You have an option to enable or disable those. Invite management options. You can now automatically decline invitations for groups, leagues, trades, duels, custom channels, scrimmages and instances. Origin Crisis boss loot changes. New item level 87 and 88 weapon drops from bosses in Paradox Wave and Nexus.
My personal favourite,
Yeah,
broker
we
change
desperately
that
need
lets
that.
you put usable by me will now disclude anything that you've already equipped.
Another personal favourite by me is the fact that in PvP now, the kills are going to be awarded by the amount of damage done, rather than you taking somebody down to about 1% and then somebody running up behind you and killing them off and then grabbing the kill from you.
Have they covered the issues that this will bring up for people that aren't DPS?
No. Nothing at all. It came up during just in the Gotham City section of the official forums, people posting like, what if you play a healer or controller? You know, you're not out there to do damage, you're there to do a specific function. And rightly so. I mean, players still want to be able to get these feats, all revolving around how many KOs you have. But they're just not going to be able to get it, really, because they can't compete with damage players.
But
It's
then
a
again, shouldn't that be the way it is, though? I mean, the DPS, if you're in there in DPS role, your job is to do as much damage as possible and to take these guys down before they can hit your healers and controllers.
To me, it strikes me like there's this feat that's been in the game since start where you've got to heal 65,000 or more damage. I think it was before 100,000, but they fixed it to 65,000 in a single match. It's okay, that's fine. How do you do that when you're not a healer? Now, there's been times, and I'm sure you could arrange matches with friends when you could just smash enough healing barrels that you could get those feats. But in a normal match, that's not going to happen. And it's the same with, changing these this feat to be basically for DPS only. And moreover, I mean, the healer feat, if you respect a healer, you've got a good chance of just getting that. It doesn't seem to be a hard feat to get, to heal that much damage in a single match. But the kills feats goes up to 10,000. I mean,
Yeah.
You can't expect people that normally play healers, controllers, tanks to play in DPS role until they've killed 10,000 people.
Yeah, I don't quite track the idea behind this alteration. There's no word from them as yet, but I posted a few ideas back and forth with people in the official forums, and something to do with like, how about a percentage contribution? So if you do a certain amount of damage to a player, you still get a count towards that. It keeps healers and controllers in the game. Because all they're going to do now is switch out to a damage spec and go in to get these feats, and you'll find yourself matched with another DPS or 3 DPS, 4 DPS, and it's just going to make for really boring games.
Well, PvP's been very controversial since the last update, hasn't it? All the new changes that have come in with the different mechanics that are in play now. So I just think this is it's added another element of unplayability into the mix. But still, I'm a DPS, and this is great news for me, because if I go into PvP, I do want to get as many kills as possible, and I want to be at the top of the leaderboard. But I can
Surely
sympathise
that's
with...
what damage out is for, though.
Yeah.
If you're talking about measuring your your scoreboard, then it's damage out tells you that. It tells you how much damage you've done. Why do you need your kill count?
Because it's an ego thing for an DPS as well.
You've got your ego thing in the damage out.
I don't know. It's still nice if you're at the top of the leaderboard with amazing DPS, and also you've got 15 kills as well. It's stupid, really, but I can sympathise with healers and controllers and tanks.
I don't know. I think that's the wrong way to look at it, really, Flame. It's as a damage player, they'll often go in and think, "Oh, my job is just to do damage." Well, take it on the flip side, and your actual job is to support the other players. So you'll defend a healer, defend a controller. You may not get to the top of the board with the damage out, but you focused what you're doing and allowed the team as a whole to be successful.
How do you defend them, though? By doing
Killing
damage?
the people that's attacking them.
Yeah, exactly. You're defending them by killing other players and doing more damage.
It just doesn't
Doesn't
work
matter
like
that you
that.
actually get the kill, though.
You've got the damage guys who are in there and they're like running around. Say they're playing a fortress, they're running around looking for the damage buff while the controllers and healers are down there trying to hold their ground. And I mean, it's not so bad with an organised team. You've got leagues going in and they can get these things rolling. But on the bigger picture, very few leagues are actually doing it. It's more pugs. So I think that the mentality putting out there that the most kills, the most damage, is the kind of thing that they should be worried about is, I don't know, not correct. I think the best option. But we'll see. I mean, it's still on the test server. People are posting their thoughts about it. Might change.
Yeah, while it's on test, it's there to be tested. It's there to be criticised and complained about or rejoiced. So get onto the test server and try it out and let the community know your thoughts. It's the only way it's going to be changed. What else have we got?
Speaking of forums, just really keeping our fingers on the pulse of what people are saying, and common themes for this week, well, for this month, for the last few months, really have been about pug groups. The headache that a lot of people have with them. Some people feel they have no choice but to go with pugs, and they'll lose out on loot. They don't get through it very quickly or efficiently. And I feel for these people, but at the same time, when you go with a pug group, it's expected. There's always ways and options. You can make friends. You can join a league who plays at the same time as you. There's options there. I just think that all the conversation about pugs is a bit misplaced.
I mean, isn't that the point of the game? Isn't that why there's the option of making a league available, is for you to eventually settle down and find a league or create one of your own?
Yeah, I mean, when I post back to people saying, look, sorry to hear you've had issues with pugs, and if you're on the EU server, give us a shout, we'll give you a hand with some content. But at the end of the day, you make the game how you want it to be. Like, if you sit back and look at a league shout and then you say, I'll join you, it doesn't quite work out, you leave, you find a different one. You have to make things work for yourself in order to progress, I think. You can't expect to join a league and hope for the best. You need to get in there and be a driving force behind it.
It's a vicious circle, really, because I believe that you can't progress your character to any great extent unless you're in a league, unless you've got that support from other people, unless you're in groups to start off with, where you can get the hardest feats in the game, which are usually from raids. You need to be in a supportive group of people that you play with regularly. You need to learn your role, how you play in a group. You can only progress your character by being in a good group or in a good league, for example. So for these people that are constantly playing solo, that are trying to get through it by pugging, they're not really giving themselves the best options of being able to progress their character. So that's the way I see it anyway.
There's been a lot of complaints about people not being able to pug through Nexus, and they get in groups and the groups don't know what they're doing, they don't know what the tactics are. And it just makes me kind of think back to when Nexus was first out, when we were doing it on the test server, and we were in there for hours and hours and hours and hours learning the tactics of that raid. We didn't just, and this might, not be what people expect of us, but we didn't just go in there and do it. We had to figure it out. And it was the same with virtually every other reasonably difficult raid that it was. I mean, Prime Battleground, there's so many tactics to that we've just forgotten about because we all know them now. FODS 2 obviously is the big one. So much of that raid we spent time figuring out. And so people come in and they say they grouped up with these people once and spent a couple of hours in there and weren't able to finish it. And is that really that surprising?
I think what a lot of this might fall back to is, I mean, I don't know from personal experience because I've never played on the PS3, but I can understand if it's not as easy to create and maintain a league on the PS3 as it is on the PC. If you can see what I'm saying, I mean the PC lends it more to being able to administrate a league, getting a league together, being able to communicate easier, whereas the PS3 doesn't really have the functions that you have on a PC to do that sort of thing.
No, there is no difference in terms of league management in DC that one platform can't do.
I mean, for example, one of the greatest tools that we use for coordinating our league is TeamSpeak, which we're using now. But you wouldn't have that function on the PS3, would you? For example,
they have terrible problems with the voice chat in DC on the PS3. But aside from that, that's a communication thing rather than a league management thing. And I think, yeah, there are bigger problems with communication within leagues on the PS3 when they're actually playing. Nobody can deny that. But management-wise, there's no reason why they can't do exactly what we do. And there are many leagues that on the PC that don't really use voice communication and are quite happy to just
yeah, no, I
as
see what
big
you're
of a
saying,
difference.
but from my own point of view, on a PS3, it'd be much harder for me to get groups together if I'm using a controller and I'm flicking through all these different menus on a controller rather than just sitting in front of a keyboard and doing it all that way.
I think anybody that plays the game to that level on the PS3 or plays their PS3 to that level, uses it to that level, will have a keyboard for it.
But a lot of people wouldn't. I don't know. I'm not great with the PS3 controller anyway, but I can imagine a lot of people just going into the game on the PS3, seeing it as a casual game, something they can pick up and put down, so they wouldn't necessarily be interested so much in joining a league anyway.
At the same time, I think it's interesting that console gaming, people seem to use voice communication more often than on PCs. Like, it seems to be fairly standard that you use whatever in-game voice chat there is in these console games. FPSs and things like that. Any of these online games, most people will be on their headsets.
So do you think it's more to do with a problem with the actual voice software to do with DC?
There is definite issues with that for the PS3. It's one of the biggest complaints that I've seen them making is that it crashes in the middle of raids and things like that, which would just be... I mean, we every now and again we'll get TeamSpeak will just drop out for no reason, but not nearly to the same extent.
Yeah. And the other conversations, one of which revolves around controllers and the hard time they're having at the moment. They've basically been pushed back to blue bar healers.
I hate that term. I don't know why, I just do.
No, not really sure why you hate that term, or it's
the actual term. It's not anything else. It's just the term. It's like they're not actually healing the blue bar. Healing is something you do to people. They're restoring the blue bar.
So regenerating the blue bar would be...
Yeah, I mean, healers don't heal the green bar. They regenerate the green bar. They heal the player. So I don't know. It bugs me.
We had a big discussion about this on the website the other day, didn't we? What's the difference between the green bar and the blue bar? And it started off quite simple with, well, one's green, one's blue. And then other people were saying, well, you can't really compare the two because a blue bar is for power and that's just being topped up. But if the green bar empties, then the player's dead. So
I've always said that one of the reasons I'm a terrible healer is I see somebody on like 75% health and I think, yeah, it's not too bad. But then they'll get hit by something that takes off 80% of their health and suddenly they're dead. As a controller, you have got to get used to the fact that the blue bar will never be full. And that's the complete opposite for healers. They have to keep people's health as high as possible. You know, absolutely at full if they can. And controllers we're never going to be able to do that.
A lot of the issues come from people saying, well, the term itself, controller, I'm supposed to be there to control the enemies as well as restore your power. And people are like, yeah, well, that's all well and good, but the game's currently doesn't promote your abilities to do that. You get the differences are so explicit. You get through a Nexus with a controller who does nothing but spam power regen in 20 to 25 minutes, whereas if they're trying to do other stuff like crowd control ads, etc., you could be in there for 30 to 40 minutes. And that's an issue with the game. The controllers need to be brought back in to do more than just restore power, but as it stands today, I think it's just about restoring power, which is a shame.
It wouldn't be as big of an issue as it is, and this is part of the problem. Just if we had more interesting ways of giving power, like if the power sets gave power in different ways, or if they had more than just 2 buttons that did it and a supercharge. But as it is, that's all we get.
I mean, the only raid that I can think of historically that CCing a mob was explicitly needed back in the day was Kandak with the Waterkeepers, where you'd be CCing one while DPSing the other one down. But I don't think any other raids have a mechanic where you'd actually need to do that.
I pugged the raids up until, and there were sections in FOS 1 and FOS 2 and in Kandak and in a couple of the Batcave ones as well. There were bits in those that were infinitely easier with controllers that knew how to crowd control. As you say, the Waterkeepers, which, I mean, when we went back and did the nostalgia run, we saw that even then you didn't need it. It was handy, but it was just, so long as you're kind of focusing everything, then the DPS had enough to do it even then. But yeah, the Waterkeepers there, the Broodmother in FOS 1 and the Bridge in FOS 2 those are the ones that stick out in my mind as bits where I was actually having fun crowd controlling as a controller, getting pushed to do stuff, and sometimes even being the difference between whether the raid succeeded and failed. But that hasn't happened in some time.
Yeah.
I'd go out on a limb and start blaming modding equipment, because it's all about DPS are now pumping out so much damage that you have no need to CC enemies, and they've made content that, again, you don't need to CC anything. Like you said, we went back and did Kandak, whereas in the day we didn't really have the output to warrant just wiping them down quick. You had to control them. When we went back again for nostalgia, that wasn't needed, even though we wore exactly the same gear that we did back then.
Stuff was just dropping so quickly, there's no need to CC.
Granted, we didn't mod the gear, but now we know the combos, we know the best rotations and loadouts. It's all there, and it's clear to see there is no discrepancy. Back in the day in Kandak, you had to control them. Today, you just pump out as much damage as you can.
And it's the design as well, because even going back at this, with the gear that we've currently got and doing stuff like Subconstruct, for instance, and there are ads in that stun people, put them in big green balls. The minute you crowd control the ads that do that, the person that's stunned breaks out. And so if we're even with the gear that we've got, if we're doing these things and we're only running with one healer, and because of the way we run them, we just blitz straight through them, run to the end, take all the ads at once. If we've only running with one, if they end up in a ball, that could mean that a couple of people are going to die, so you need to break out the healer as soon as possible. It's not a huge problem these days, but it is part of the tactics and the design of the raid that this is still true. Similarly, if we were to go and do, say, a speed run for Inner Sanctum, I'd be crowd controlling the eye drones, because you do not want them sucking away the power from people, and they're really easy to crowd control.
It's a controversial topic, and I mean, I think it's something that we could speak about for a long time, but I don't see anything in the near future that's going to change, especially with the tier 5 raids as they are at the moment. I mean, people still aren't able to get through those on a regular basis as they are, so I think there's a lot of different things that people are going to complain about that aren't necessarily going to change that soon.
Yeah, and then the last topic from the forums that I'll bring up is the loot. People are running Paradox and Nexus, and what you're getting still doesn't track with the level of difficulty of the content. You're walking away with... Well, I took screenshots actually of our runs last week, and I think three of the runs, 4 players got the exact same item. And when you start seeing that in the loot tables, I don't know. I start to agree. I used to think, you know what, it's random. We have to go with it. We'll get our stuff eventually if we keep running it enough. But for 3 raids across 3 or 4 days, and you see what was it? It was like the DPS 86 waste or whatever it was, and it's the same stuff, and you think, I can't be bothered running this anymore because there's no value to it.
I mean, this looks like it's starting to be addressed with the new game update, with what they've said about the 87 and 88 combat rating weapons.
That's not addressing the issue of drop rates, though, which are what people are having issues with. That's adding more things to the already cluttered table.
Well,
I'm hoping that harder.
When this new game update released, I'm going to go in and I'm going to get a 88 bow at the end of Nexus. That's what I'm hoping for. But as you say,
you'd get it in Paradox for one.
Yeah, 87 is still going to be in Nexus and Paradox, but 88 is explicitly Paradox.
Damn.
And this is the thing. I mean, for me, I'm a Hand Blasters user and have been for quite some time. And I've got the 87 Hand Blasters, and that's great. But I would love the 88 Hand Blasters. And they dropped in Paradox before, and now there's 4 or 5 more weapons that are getting added in, which makes it substantially less likely that I'm actually going to get the Hand Blasters. And obviously, I mean, it's unfair that those other weapons weren't dropping before now, but it still just means that the loot table is just more cluttered.
Yeah, I mean, the players are saying, yeah, give us a choice, let us choose what we get, kind of thing. And Meps posted recently saying, well, I mean, this isn't his exact quote, but it was, in essence, he was saying, if players get the items that they want as soon as they can, then they'll have no requirement to play that content anymore, and then they'll get bored and they might leave. And I can understand where he's coming from, but at the same time, DC's never really been about getting all the items that you can, the best loot. I mean, look at us, we've been here since the game's launched, and we're still running Kandak and Fortress. We don't need the loot, we got the best that we can. But we're still here logging in every day, playing.
I'm not sure we can really be taken as a good representative of the DC playing population, though.
I don't know, there's still the requirement to run those raids for style.
But that's not a requirement. I mean, the amount that people actually care about skill points these days, it's only your, pardon me for saying it, but elitist members that actually want to bother with that. The casuals don't care.
Well, if you care about progressing your character, then you do want to go for those feats, don't you? You do want to complete that style to get that 25
But
point feat.
the majority of the players of DC seem to be casual.
Hmm.
And so, I mean, I think they've completely messed up with the loot in the tier 5 content, and I think that was obvious from the very beginning, and there was threads about it from the very beginning. I think one of the biggest problems with it was that they didn't have unique styles on the 85 bits that were dropping in Paradox and Nexus. Because if they had styles on those, then that was an extra reason to run the raids. You were still looking for, you would have gotten more out of it than just potential last boss loot.
Maybe
But
maybe
but
it
they
would be an
dropped
idea
that.
then to, like you have in some of the tier 5 content, like at the Raven bounty, having a chance of having a box drop in, and then when you open that box, you get a choice of item. You get to choose. Say if it was the tracing time gear that drops in a box, you could choose which part of that
The problem I have with
you
what
wanted.
Meps has said about giving players what they want immediately is that there's a twofold thing that they're doing with this. They're saying that most of the time you'll get 86 drops, and on the last boss you have a chance of getting 87. And on the other hand, they're also saying that 87 bit might not be what you want. One of those two would be fine. Both of them makes it absolutely heartbreaking to run these raids. If it was just, you go in and you have a chance of getting 87 gear, if it's Paradox 88 gear, and that gear will definitely be something that you can use and will be what you want, then that would be something. And if it's you'll definitely guaranteed get 88 gear, but it might not be what you want, that's acceptable. But both of these things, that's not.
Yeah.
Interesting topics. If you have any thoughts, whack them in the comments section. We'll give those a read and perhaps talk about them in the next Lockbox.
Jump on the test server as well.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's flip over some genre news, and I've got some news this week. Got lots of news.
Beep, 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 beep.
Let's start with True Blood, one of my favourite TV shows. It's been announced that it's going to finish next year with season 7. I don't know if any of you guys watched True Blood at all.
Nope.
Caught the first few episodes of the first season, but I didn't really get into it too much.
It's a crazy, crazy show. Lots of character development, lots of crazy stuff going on. A brilliant premise. I mean, to start off with, the show is that synthetic blood has been developed, which is called True Blood, and because this synthetic blood has been developed, all of the vampires that were hidden secretly around the world started coming out of the woodwork, because they don't need to run up behind the people and attack them and drink their blood. They can just buy it over the counter now, and it's sort of led on from there. But I for one will certainly be sad to see it go.
Is this not based on a series of books?
Yeah, by Charlene Harris.
Are they, finishing off the plot then?
I think so. Yeah, I think that each season was attributed to one of the books in the series. So I'm assuming that there's 7 books in the series, but I might be wrong. But it's been one of the highest rated shows for HBO ever since it started running. So they may be replacing it with something else that's very controversial and full of sex and swearing. We don't know.
They're the ones that do Game of Thrones, aren't they?
Is it HBO?
I thought
Yeah.
it was.
Yeah, it is.
Controversial,
Yeah.
full of sex.
Yeah. I suppose that's going to be HBO's poster boy from now on. Moving on from that, there's been a rumour that Benedict Cumberbatch has been cast in Star Wars Episode 7.
This guy is getting everywhere.
He is.
He was the best thing about the most recent Star Trek film.
But I think since then he's sort of disavowed this rumour, but I think that people latched onto it because they know that J.J. Abrams is going to be filming or directing Star Wars Episode 7.
Yeah.
And apparently that Benedict Cumberbatch got on so well with him. And also, Benedict Cumberbatch has just dropped out of a film called Crimson Peak that he was meant to be filming sometime soon, and people were saying that's because he's going to be one of the Sith in Star Wars Episode 7, but we won't know what's happening yet.
He's a good actor.
He's a very good actor, but
Has there only been anything specific about what kind of role he'd play if he was to be in it?
well, there was like a casting list that was released quite a while ago now that were detailing the characters that we were likely to be seeing in Star Wars Episode 7, and there was one that was a 30 to 40 year old guy, military type, quite serious, I think, and people are thinking that maybe he'll play a high ranking member of the Empire or a Sith or something, but we don't know. It could be a Jedi, it could be no one. We don't know yet until there's more concrete details released, which will probably be at the beginning of next year, which is when they're meant to start filming Episode 7. Anyway, moving on from that, some more news about Batman.
Dun dun dun.
Dun dun dun. And apparently an old James Bond has expressed his interest at playing Alfred.
Which one?
When that would be Timothy Dalton. If anybody's heard of Timothy Dalton, he played James Bond. I think it was in The Living Daylights and A License to Kill, both James Bond films from the 80s.
Yeah.
Don't know any more about that yet, but I think he'd be pretty good for an Alfred. That's if we even see Alfred in the new movie. There's nothing been said about that at the moment.
I hope we do, but Alfred's such a pivotal piece to a Batman story that I think we have to see him.
And also, we haven't, when we've seen Alfred on film, we haven't really seen too much character development for him. We have not seen anything about his Secret Service years or him being a former spy or a soldier. I mean, that's something that Timothy Dalton could bring to the table if he's a more action-packed Alfred, somebody that even has a part in Bruce Wayne's training, or Bruce Wayne coming home from a night out on patrol and Alfred patching him up or resetting a broken arm or something.
Yeah. Because I really like Michael Caine as Alfred for Batman in the Nolan verse. And I know it's not really feasible for him to come back in, but I think he made a really good Alfred.
Yeah, he was pretty good. Katie Sackhoff.
Starbucks,
We know-
Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah, you know who she is and her?
Not a clue.
Blonde bombshell from Battlestar Galactica. Well, she's rumoured to have been in talks with Marvel about playing the role of Miss Marvel in a standalone Marvel film. Now, she's refuted these claims, but she hasn't refuted the fact that her management or her people may have been in contact with Marvel about the role. So she sort of denied the claims, but she hasn't denied it outright. She said that she hasn't spoken to them, but her people might have. Miss Marvel, of course, one of the characters from the Marvel comics. She's had quite a long and varied history in Marvel. I think she first came to my attention when her powers were stolen by Rogue, who, if anybody knows the background of Rogue, she can touch another person, absorb all their memories and their even absorb their powers, and this is what she did to Miss Marvel in the comic books. I think
This
she's
is
a
how
good choice.
Rogue doesn't keep the powers, except in this one instance which for some reason she did keep the ability to fly.
I think what happened is that she'd only ever used her powers to sort of knock people out and absorb some of their memories from them, but she was encouraged by Mystique to stay touching Miss Marvel for an extended amount of time, and she managed to absorb all of her memories, all of her powers, and put Miss Marvel into a coma as well. And that's the longest amount of time that she's ever tried using her power. And it nearly killed Miss Marvel, so I don't know whether we'll see any of that because of the different studios that are making the X-Men and the Avengers. But more news about that, hopefully in the near future, because I think it should be great. Terminator 5, which is due to begin filming next year, I believe. And we spoke about this on the Lockbox before, that there's been news that the franchise is going to be rebooted for a new trilogy of movies, so that we'll be coming away from the past films. They'll be ending. They won't be consecutive films that carry on. It'll be a brand new trilogy. But now more news has come out that apparently these films will be carrying on from Terminator 4 into a Terminator 5, and that both Michael Biehn and Linda Hamilton will be returning as John Connor's parents. I'm not sure what to think about this. Sarah Connor and Kyle Reese.
It'll be interesting.
Do we really want to see an aging pair of action stars running around on screen?
Tell that to Arnie.
Yeah, it worked for the Expendables.
And everyone that was in the Expendables.
Yeah. But I was sort of liking the idea that they was going to reboot the franchise for a new trilogy with a new Terminator. Because the past couple haven't really been up to par with the first two films, I believe.
Yeah, I'd agree. But I wouldn't see how they'd reboot the franchise. I mean, I know it's all about time travel, and you can do anything once you have time travel in the story. But I think the first two are so good that they'd have to be kept in the story arc somehow.
I can't see as any film that would be rebooted would come up to the standard of the original Terminator and Terminator 2.
Terminator 2 was one of the world's first good sequels.
Yeah. But then again, rebooting the whole franchise entirely, remaking them, doing something different, I don't know. We don't know. Good idea, bad idea? I'm sort of on the fence about this one. My last piece of news. Apparently, Arrow Season 2 has found its Barry Allen. And everybody that knows Barry Allen will know that he plays the Flash in DC. Or he is the Flash in DC Comics, should I say. And there was a bit of a an iron about who was going to play the Flash or Barry Allen in Season 2. And they bandied a few names around. And the guy they've chosen, his name is, just trying to find it now, Grant Gustin, and he's
famous for being in Glee, I believe.
Yeah, he's famous for being in Glee, and I'm looking at a photo of him right now, and he looks about 16 years old. And for me personally, I don't see why they've chosen him. I don't know how this is going to work.
If he's playing Barry Allen, I'll just Google him as well. He looks too young. You never know, though. They might do their magic and make him appear older, but...
Yeah. Well, some people are saying that Barry Allen's going to be a rookie forensics guy just out of college, and he's starting off in his career. And this is going to be like a whole new origin for him, and it's going to show him as he starts out how he gains his powers and stuff. But I still think the guy they've chosen does look too young to play even a rookie forensics investigator.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all I've got for genre news today. If you've got any interests, if you've got any questions about stuff that we've spoken about today, please remember to let us know in the comments below on the YouTube channel. For now, we've got our interview for you, and this week it's Kristyana from USPC, Fire Tank Extraordinaire.
Oh,
Shall we grab him in, guys?
let's do it.
Hello, Kristyana. How are you?
Not too bad, all things considered. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. I'm going to start off with a few questions, a few standard ones. Nothing too difficult.
Okay.
Okay. So, what made you start playing DC?
Well, I have a friend who used to work at Sony Online Entertainment, and back in, gosh, probably summer of 2010 when the game was in development, we would go out to dinner or lunch or stuff all the time, and she would just tell me about this great new game that they were working on. It was an MMO, but it involved the DC Universe franchise, and she would tell me about all this great stuff that was happening with the game. And so by the time that it actually launched in 2011, I was really excited for it. So I thought, okay, sure, I'll give it a try, and I bought it the day it launched. I actually bought the physical copy of the game, and I was hooked from the first time I played it.
Cool. Did you have an interest in... Sorry, Tess.
I was going to say, you're pretty well known for being a tank. Did you start out as a tank?
You're gonna hate me. I have never played another MMO before I picked up DC Universe, so I didn't even know what a tank was. I picked Fire because I just enjoyed the power set of the original 6 that came out. I think it fit my character concept quite a bit. And then as the game progressed, I found out, oh, okay, this is what my character's support role is. And so that was the main reason I started as a tank, just because I liked Fire. But I had no idea that Fire was a tank. If Fire was a healer, I would probably be known as a healer, or if Fire was a troller, that would probably be the role that I would do the most.
Did you have an interest in DC before you started playing DC Online? I mean, did you read the comic books or anything?
I didn't really read the comics growing up. My family, we didn't really have that much expendable income for things like comics. But I will say that, growing up when I did the 90s, Superman the animated series, Batman the animated series, pretty much most of my involvement with DC involved the animated cartoons and the franchises. So everyone knows about Wonder Woman and Batman and Superman, so the game does a really good job of drawing in people that are just kind of casual, as opposed to people that know like exactly what happened with Infinite Crisis or everything else like that.
Cool. So, has any other power set interested you at all? Have you ever played any other power set?
Yeah, I've played all of them over the course of the game, whether I've respect or I've ended up doing characters on test. I have a mental controller, I have an electric healer. Those are the two power sets for the role which I like the most. I'm thinking about switching my healer over to Celestial. I'm not 100% committed to that yet.
Have you been playing around with that one a lot then?
I have been. I've been on the test server with a couple really good people, along with some of the developers themselves, helping them test it, work out the bugs, providing some feedback. And it's a really unique power set. I mean, there's nothing like it in the game. It's kind of like a combination between Hard Light and Earth, where it's combo based, but it's not nearly as complex.
Fantastic.
You do a lot of testing work with different powers. I mean, your fire tanking thread goes into a lot of depth and detail about the exact mechanics behind it. I think I remember at one point you helping to troubleshoot some of the bugs with a power set by just figuring out what was going on behind the scenes and figuring out what wasn't supposed to be happening. So, I mean, how much enjoyment do you get out of that aspect of the game?
I'm a little OCD when it comes to that type of stuff. I've always been a math kid growing up. I've loved equations. I love doing that type of stuff, and it was always kind of fun to figure out, okay, this is exactly what this does. And I think that if someone knows, not just how a power set or how a mechanic works, but they know why it works, I think that overall, that's one of the things that separates like really good players from really great players. So I enjoy doing that, just for my own benefit, and I like passing that stuff on because it helps other people be better at their roles.
So do you think you're interested in the actual mechanics of the power set, and that has led to you being recognised as one of the best fire tanks in the game? Or how did that come about?
That came about because if you remember at launch, the two tanks in the game were fire and ice. And Ice's shielding used to be a lot more powerful than it is now. Um, it ended up being kind of the easier mode tank to do because you didn't really have to understand tanking mechanics to play as Ice because you could hit this defense cap back then and it would just allow you to play as a DPS. So you could be a tank without playing like a tank. And as a result, the population for fire tanks just completely dropped. I mean, I think on my server, which was Darkness Falls before the server merge, there were maybe 4 or 5 fire tanks at that point. And I knew it wasn't really a weak class, but nobody had really dove into the mechanics of, okay, how exactly does fire work? How do the buffs work? How do we actually work as a tank, and how do we survive as one? And I sat down and I tried to come up with the statistics. And I actually found out that for pure survivability back then, fire was actually ahead of ice if you could play a certain way. So I made that guide. I wrote my first fire tank guide probably back in March, or it was between March and May of 2011, just explaining it. And I guess from there, a lot of people took off with it. They really enjoyed it. And I actually had a lot of ice tanks hate me because I wrote that.
How do you approach the new Tier 5 content? Because I know that a lot of tanks do seem to have problems tanking the Nexus and Paradox raids. How has that worked out for you?
Well, first, especially if you're a tank, you're only as good as your team. You have to have a good team of players that you know before. Like, I would never jump into just a random pug. If you see someone shouting in LFG, okay, yeah, we need a tank. I would go in there with a league, or I would go in there with people that I knew how to play. Because when you play with people for a while, tend to you tend to know what they're going to do before they do it, and you just mesh really well as a team. And it allows you to focus on your job as a tank, but also kind of pick up little things in the raid, because when I'm tanking, especially, I'm looking for things that I can counter, I'm looking for attack windows, I'm trying to pay attention to vulnerabilities or when I should refresh my taunts. And that's kind of hard to do when you have a bad group, when you're just doing everything you can just to survive and try to keep everything off everybody else.
So you'd say the Tier 5 content makes you work a lot harder than you would in any of the other
Oh
raids?
yes, oh yes. It doesn't matter what type of tank you are, except for ice. Ice has it a little bit easier in the raids than in the new T5, especially when you're first starting out in the content. Um, Once again, not saying that ice is better than fire, or in the hands of a player, they're not equally skilled, but ice does have a little bit of an easier time for people that are trying to figure out mechanics.
Hmm. I think it's the same for the other power sets as well. The T5 content was a massive wake-up call for a lot of people, and I think it still is now. It's not something that you can sort of muddle through. It's something that you do have to concentrate on wholeheartedly when you're in Nexus or Paradox. So, Kristyana, tell us a bit about your league. Which league you're in?
Right now, I'm in Squad 11. We're one of the oldest leagues on the PC side, USPC. I joined it a couple years ago, actually, and it's been a pretty tight-knit group of people. We're just a bunch of friends that like playing together.
So you knew each other in real life as well as in game?
It didn't start out that way. There's only 2 people in League that I know in real life, and I met them both at SOE Live, the convention in Vegas, actually. So I don't know. No, I don't think I know anybody in real life that I convinced to play DC.
Tell us a little bit more about Squad 11. How did you all meet up in game, and actually formed the league?
Well, Squad 11, they were already formed from a merger from a couple different leagues. And I came over with a group from, we had a league called Fan Service that we were a part of. And when Star Wars The Old Republic came out, a bunch of our players moved over to that one. And they said, oh, we'll still be able to, log in on Thursdays, because this was before replay badges. They said, we'll log in on Thursdays, we'll get the raids done, and everything will be fine. And myself and a bunch of other people had work on Thursdays, so we weren't able to log in on raid night. And it just ended up a lot of people left, and they never came back. So myself and probably about 5 or 6 other people from that league, we were trying to find a new league that we could start with, and Squad 11 decided they would take us in. I think myself and only one other person are now the ones who are still left over there. But that was how a lot of leagues survived back before this mega server merge. We had a lot of old leagues that merged together, and Squad 11 just happened to be one of the ones from Darkness Falls that came on.
So, do you have any idea what happened to squads 1 through 10?
We don't talk about them.
Sorry.
They're the failed clones.
You've mentioned a couple of times now that you were at SOE Live and you've had discussions with the developers. Do you have much contact with the developers about the game?
I do. I'm on something called the Community Council, which is basically, it's kind of like a roundtable thing for players that have been deemed helpful. We have our own little group that we kind of present issues that are happening in the community. I'm on it, Daddy-O's on it, a few other people are on it. And it provides kind of a middle ground because the main forums for the game are filled with such anger and hatred that it's so hard for the developers to pick up any good suggestions or little nuggets of knowledge that go along the way. And so we kind of provide a buffer between them. But yeah, we do like to work with the devs. We like giving suggestions. Sometimes not all of them are planned, but it's been quite a fun experience.
Oh, that sounds pretty cool though. So you act as like a filter for all the crap and the bad vibes from the community.
There's quite a lot of that.
So, outside of DCUO, do you play any other type of game? Or I know you mentioned before that DC was your first MMO, but what sort of other game interests you? Do you play any first-person shooters or anything else?
I used to play first-person shooters. I always found them kind of shallow, though. I'm just not the type of person that likes to get on and, pew-pew. I do enjoy Minecraft. I've got a couple mega builds I work with a few other people on. And then there's a few other MMOs I play, but that's pretty much it.
Oh, cool. Me and Tess have both had experience in Minecraft as well. Tess, much more so than me.
We built a really big wall.
Is it the wall in the north?
That's not quite that big. We should have done that. Why didn't we do that?
Make Castle black.
I think I've seen videos of that actually.
It's I was completely hooked from the second that I started Minecraft, and I've enjoyed it. I've had to wean myself away from it because it's so addictive.
So to come back to DC then, what would you say is your most proud achievement when you've been playing the game? Or, outside of the game, just related to the game.
I think the two most proud moments that I've had were, it's kind of hard to pinpoint a moment, but being a fire tank, especially back in the old days, being able to do things as well as ice, or being the first one to do certain things, like the first tank to solo clear Fortress of Solitude 2, the first fire tank to solo, actually the first tank, period, to solo the Prime Numbers feat in Prime Battleground. I think my most proud moment, though, was the first SOE Live I attended. I was there with Sir Mutton Chops, and we entered the Legends PvP tournament, and we got second place. We lost to Slob and Haiwan. At a very close match, it came down to about 5 seconds,
They were
and
cheering
that
you
was
on.
probably my favorite moment. But it was really great because we beat them in the preliminaries by quite a hefty margin. So they just happened to win the match that had money on the line. um,
Harsh.
yeah, but we went in there with no one actually thinking that we would do good, and we ended up they earned it, but it was really fun. And then we had a chance to see them again when they were out here, and they won again. Unfortunately, my partner couldn't make it, so I had to pug a tournament partner. I went with Soar, and there were just so many good players there. We were just completely outclassed this year.
The kind of communication and partnership with the other player can be a big factor in these kind of things.
Yeah, well, especially too because the PlayStation 3 players were at a disadvantage because on PlayStation 3, apparently there's a couple millisecond lag between inputting a button and doing what your character does, as opposed to it being instant on the PC. So it's kind of spawned this whole thing about which is more skilled, PC players or PS3 players. And having played from both sides of it, I can definitely see that they're both skilled. It's kind of like the difference if you remember back in the day, like playing Quake or Unreal Tournament on a dial up connection when you had a ping of several hundred, and you were able to keep up with people that had cable modems with a ping of 50. Both players are skilled, but it's a completely different type of skill set.
I have actually got DC on my PS3, which is it's an original PS3, so it runs quite slowly these days.
Oh, wow.
And it's got terrible Wi-Fi. And the last time I tried to run updates, it said it was going to take about a week, so I just didn't bother. But I did do at one point, because I've got such a low-level character, I did some Legends PvP at one point. It was just nuts. It was like, I don't understand how people play like this, but I suppose they don't, because they don't play over the Wi-Fi with a terrible connection. So
Yeah, I mean, and I told players too that since the tournaments are held on PCs, even with the PlayStation 3 controllers, I had said, well, only had one team, one PS3 team each year. There have been a couple each year, but we've only had one that's actually advanced in it. The other ones usually get knocked out in the first round. And it's because that they can't adapt to the timing fast enough of having things be instant as opposed to telegraphing or thinking one or two moves ahead. But I said that if they were to reverse it and they were actually to have the PlayStation host the tournament and have the PC players play on the PlayStation, then it would be the other way around. You probably wouldn't have a PC team that came close to the finals.
to go to the flip side, then, what is your most embarrassing moment in DC?
I'm trying to think of one. There's nothing that really comes to bed off the top of my head. Um, there have been times when they've changed things on me because I try to be pretty good with my statistics and everything else. There have been times when I've gotten into heated arguments with something about something like with fire tanking or celestial, and I've just been so self-assured and so right because I know that I've tested it, and then I find out that, oh wait, there was a ninja patch and this person was actually right in what they were saying all along, and then I have to go back and like, okay, I'm sorry, you're right.
That doesn't sound too bad.
I remember having a discussion like that when somebody was insistent that Phantom Flames only debuffed one person. I was like, no, it's since the start of the game, it's debuffed a group. Oh, they changed it. Oh, okay.
Yeah, just I've unfortunately spread some false info, or I've had old info that's been there. There was some old info that I think the biggest one was how fire and ice used to draw aggro. They used to draw it differently, so you had to play the tanks differently. And I was the one that mentioned that in my fire guide. And unfortunately, I think maybe it is kind of an embarrassment or more of an annoyance, but when you have sites like MMO Life or other ones that pick up guides from the forums and they never update them, so there's still so much false information out there, not just about fire but other power sets, that the guide was written back with like update 10 or 14, and it's never been updated, and people still quote them saying, oh well, this works great, this doesn't, and then I still get like PMs in my inbox like, you have no clue what you're talking about, and like, well, you're using a version of, like, you're quoting something I said back in 2011 and you're saying I don't know what I'm talking about.
As sort of like a bookend to the interview, Do you have anything that you'd like to ask us as Odyssey, or ask Odyssey as a whole?
Not really ask, but just wanted to say, thank you for being an awesome league, because I know that you guys work hand in hand with the developers and new content to try new stuff out, and I know that they've appreciated it with the epic Odyssey feat. And I just hope that you guys keep doing what you're doing, because you're one of the most beneficial leagues to this game.
Oh,
Oh, shed a tear there.
they're all warm and fuzzy.
Okay, then do you have any more questions, Tess?
No, I don't think I do.
Cool. Well, we'd like to say thank you for joining us.
I have one.
Oh,
When
goody.
are you going to get around to leveling up your EU character?
As soon as I get you guys to walk me through gates a couple more times.
I'm sure that can be arranged.
I'm full T2, but yes,
Tier
my playtime's been kind of restricted because work's been kicking up. So, unfortunately, work comes first because I need money, and then game times had to go on the back burner.
Well, I'm sure we'll see you on soon.
Absolutely.
We'll drag you through some content, no problem. Anyway, Chris, thanks for joining us today. I'm sure your interview will be much enjoyed. On behalf of Odyssey, I'd like to thank you for joining us today, and on behalf of myself and Tess, thanks for coming in and speaking to us.
Once again, thanks for having me.
There you have it, guys. There was our interview with Kristyana. Hope you enjoyed it. And from myself, Flame Fury, Tesseract, and her, I'd like to thank you for listening to the show again, Lockbox episode 8. Remember, if you've got any questions, please feel free to put some comments in the YouTube channel below, or even ask us in game, because we all love receiving tells at the most inopportune moments. Anyway, thanks for listening. I've been Flame Fury.
I've been Tesseract.
And I've been Anna.
Thanks for joining us, guys, and we hope to see you again soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Remember, it may never rats.